In the 1950s, Dr. Stuart Wolfe completely changed the way the world looks at health. After a lecture at the University of Oklahoma, Wolfe was invited out for a beer with a colleague who had an interesting story to tell. There was a town just outside of Bangor, Pennsylvania, known as Roseto. A small group of Italian immigrants had settled there in the early 1900s and remained almost entirely isolated from the outside world. They spoke nothing but Italian, and even the architecture reflected their cultural roots. However, while the degree of mystery surrounding the community was compelling, there was something much more compelling to talk about. There wasn't a single person in the entire town of Roseto who was dying from heart disease. We now know heart disease kills over 500,000 Americans every single year today, but this time period of the 1950s is really when heart disease began to reach epidemic-level proportions, a time when smoking and drinking daily was acceptable. Our food supply chain was becoming less and less nutritious, and inactivity was rampant. Heart disease was cementing itself as the top killer in the United States for decades to come. So how could a community, this community of Roseto, simply be excluded from this? Dr. Wolfe was fascinated by this and began to uncover a groundbreaking idea. In his research, he theorized that there was more to health than simply diet, exercise, and genetics. The people of Roseto were so healthy because of traditional Italian values that they held on to. Multiple generations lived under one roof. People stopped and spoke to each other on the streets, and they simply valued their community. As a result, the medical field was forever changed. General health and well-being was no longer linked to just diet and exercise, but every part of our lives. This was read mostly from a piece by Eco Delight Coffee, all about coffee as a health outlier. And if you're a fan of this show, then Dr. Wolfe's theory should not come as a surprise to you. Myself and folks like Dr. Coffee and others have talked about the need to take a holistic approach to your wellness, and science is now supporting this. This particular article did spark a thought in my mind, though. Blue zones have always fascinated me. We've discussed blue zones before on this show. This is a list of various locations around the world where the individuals who live there, in that culture, and adhere to their customs, live for an extraordinary amount of time, sometimes significantly longer than the average life expectancy. There are 5 commonly accepted blue zones as coined by Dan Buettner in his National Geographic story called The Secrets of a Long Life. And I want to go over each of these zones with you today, one by one. This might actually be a 2-parter because there's a lot to get into, but I want to explore the daily lifestyle of these cultures. I want to see the common threads that we can find running throughout them, no matter where they are on the globe. And I'll tell you right off the bat, both Buettner and Dr. Wolfe are absolutely correct. Without fail, 5 out of 5 of these cultures listed put a heavy emphasis on things like community, social interaction, spiritual wellness, rest and relaxation, gardening, and much more. The theories above could explain a lot about why blue zones are the way they are. But I've also found another common thread amongst all these cultures, one that we know impacts longevity significantly. That's right, you guessed it, coffee. Coffee. And after doing loads of research, there is quite a bit to dig into here. So let's dive into today's exploration of longevity and blue zones around the world. First, we visit Icaria, Greece, a tiny little island that belongs to the nation of Greece. However, if you look on a world map, it's actually closer to the western coast of Turkey than the eastern coast of the Greek mainland. More on that in a minute. Here on Icaria, though, astonishingly, 1/3 of the population lives to be over 90 years old. Now, this piqued the interest of aforementioned author Dan Buettner, who in 2012 published a piece detailing his theories on why the people of Icaria lived so long. To begin, the Icarian diet has many themes with all the diets that we're going to be exploring today, including zero processed foods, mainly plant-based diets, high in healthy fats like olive oil and grass-fed goat's milk, low in meat, and very little sugar or processed flour. These blue zone cultures do have little unique spins on their diet, though, and the Icarian one is fascinating. Icarians eat a diet that is very high in herbs. Fresh herbs are eaten daily, and many of the locals still utilize herbal medicine and traditional Greek remedies in their homes. Interestingly enough, health podcast titan Ben Greenfield put together his own food pyramid, and fresh herbs was on that food pyramid. It was a major part of it. I believe it was the top that replaced the traditional sugar tip of the food pyramid. I spoke to Ben Greenfield on a different show, and I remember that point very specifically. I think herb consumption is a highly underrated part of our diet and health today. There's more to the Icarians' longevity than just diet, though. Living an involved life full of social interactions and relationship experiences is a huge part of Icarian culture. They stay busy, they work into old age, and they live in community family homes. Napping is also encouraged in the Icarian culture and has massive benefits for brain health and more. Dan Buettner writes about the Icarian lifestyle, quote, "Wake naturally, work in the garden, have a late lunch, take a nap," end quote. That sounds like the life. Low stress, time with plants, consuming plants and herbs. Incredible. The Icarians are also known for a healthy sex life and claim that this plays into their long lifespan. I guess you got to keep loving in order to keep living, especially on the island of Icaria. But it's not all about laying around and staying relaxed and making love. Icarians also get a good amount of daily exercise, as do all of the folks living in all of these blue zones. The Icarians have it particularly easy, or maybe particularly difficult, because there are so many hills in Icaria. If you want to go anywhere, quote, "It's hard to get through the day in Icaria without walking up 20 hills," end quote. As for the beverages of choice, antioxidant-rich wine is consumed daily, which we know has an impact on longevity. Their local wine is loaded with all sorts of anthocyanins and phenols, but it also carries alcohol, of course, which causes inflammation. But that leads to my final point. There's one more little common theme that I must address before we move on. The other beverage of choice, coffee. That's right. Icarians love their coffee, and they drink it every single day. And you may say to yourself, Greece, not particularly famous for their coffee consumption. I mean, certainly across Europe, but when I think coffee, I don't necessarily think Greece. Well, as I said earlier, the Icarians actually take their love of coffee and their coffee habits from the Turkish culture, which is very, very deeply steeped in coffee history, pardon the pun. Being so close to the coast of Turkey, they share that coffee love, and they even drink their coffee Turkish style, piping hot, unfiltered, with a little bit of grounds in the bottom of the mugs. More to come on these blue zones and their love of coffee, though. For now, let's move on, headed westward, but not too far, to beautiful Sardinia. Sardinia, a sizable island off the western coast of Italy, about to be kicked by the boot, if you will. Sardinia averages 10 times the average amount of centenarians per capita, those who are living over 100, compared to the United States. And it's one of the only places in the world where men outlive the women on average. A cluster of villages comprises one of the longest living cultures on the planet in Sardinia. Now, interestingly enough, we are largely here to discuss non-genetic influences, longevity indicators outside of genetics. But we need to make a note here. The Sardinian people do tend to carry exceptional genes for longevity. The M26 marker is linked to extraordinary longevity, and the people of Sardinia carry this gene and have kept it undiluted due to their geographic location and cultural isolation. So while it's true they are definitely set up for success from a genetic standpoint, they also have many lifestyle factors that play into their long lifespans. They have kept to a very traditional, healthy lifestyle. Sardinians still hunt, fish, and harvest the food that they eat. They remain close with friends and family throughout their entire lives. They laugh and they drink wine together. They eat a plant-based diet, again, with little sugar, accented with meat and fish. While their diet appears high in grains and dairy, their grain of choice is actually barley, not wheat, for instance. And their dairy comes primarily from local sheep's and goat's milk, not factory farming-based toxic dairy production systems. As we are going to find in all of these blue zone cases, the Sardinian diet is very high in omega-3 fatty acids. We've discussed these incredibly healthy acids before that satisfy your hunger cravings, they reduce inflammation, they promote brain health, prevent disease, and more. And Sardinians are getting loads of omega-3 fatty acids from the little fish that they do eat, not as much as other cultures, but mostly from the grass-fed Sardinian sheep's milk that they drink daily. As we alluded to earlier, the social values of Sardinians play a huge role in their life. Sardinians, particularly the males, are famous for their sardonic sense of humor. That's right, it even has its own word. This is kind of a cynical, dry, maybe dark humor, you could say, and many attribute this attitude to the longevity of the males on the island. Sardinians gather in the street each afternoon to laugh with and at each other. Laughter reduces stress, which can lower one's risk of cardiovascular disease. There are a number of studies on optimism and longevity that shows that a happy, healthy attitude can keep your body healthier for longer. The hunting and gathering tradition ensures plenty of daily low-grade exercise for the Sardinians, so inactivity is not an issue. And this is what we see across the board. It's not so much about intense training periods, but all these cultures just have low-grade, moderate exercise output every single day. It seems to be a very, very important part of the Blue Zone amalgamum. And, as we have said before, fresh antioxidant-rich wine is abound. They consume it in moderation, and of course that may also aid in extending their lifespan. But many Sardinians prefer coffee as their beverage of choice. The little island is littered with coffee shops on nearly every corner in the main city of Cagliari. A cappuccino in the morning, a coffee in the afternoon, or even well into the evening, this ritual is baked into the Sardinian culture. Sardinians and Italians are distinctly different in many ways, but one thing that does not separate them is their undying passion for all things coffee, cappuccino, and espresso. It looks like we're going to turn this into a two-parter, exploring blue zones and their relation to, you guessed it, coffee. And it's important to note here, Dr. Coffee's voice is ringing in my head. We are talking about healthy coffee. We are talking about an organically farmed, not covered in pesticide, not brewed in unhealthy water, like a Purity coffee. If you're looking to extend your lifespan, only drink the best. Got to throw out puritycoffee.com and use code CHSPodcast for 20% off and free shipping. That's what you want to incorporate in your diet if you're looking for the maximum benefits that coffee has to offer. I know I opened the show a little different, so I'm going to say thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and share the program. It is how we grow. Subscribe so you catch every single episode. Give us a good rating and review if you liked today's episode. We've got 3 more blue zones to explore in part 2. I think that's coming in 2 weeks here, and we're saving the best for last. Some really interesting stuff coming up in the exploration that I have planned, folks. So thank you again. Please stay tuned, and have an extraordinary day, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Coffee, Health, and Science Podcast. Bye-bye.